Hi, and welcome to today's episode of pianoTV. So today I wanted to take a look at the easiest Bach videos. And we've done this with a few other composers already. I think we've done it with Chopin and Beethoven. So I wanted to look at Bach because he has pieces that at their easiest start from about a grade 3 Royal Conservatory level. And then they get all the way right up to like the most advanced piano music that you could possibly play. So if you've been wanting to learn Bach or get into like Baroque music, but you don't really know where to start, I hope that this video is going to be useful for you to give you a sense of what pieces are easy to difficult. We're going to kind of go through all of his music based on difficulty. We're going to start with the easiest and then progressively work our way up. And just as a quick note, I'm going to be referring to grades of music when we talk about Bach today. So I'm mainly referring to the Royal Conservatory grades, but the ABRSM grades are super similar too if you're familiar with that system. And I'm also, just for like more, detail and breadth, I'm also going to be including the Henley rating system as well, because a lot of you are familiar with that, and hopefully it's helpful. Anyway, let's get started. The easiest way to do this is to divide his pieces into categories, and those are as follows. And these are going to be in order of the easiest to the most difficult. So we have the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach. We've got his little preludes and fuguettas, inventions and sinfonias, which are often linked in the same book. The well-tempered clavier, there's book 1 and book 2 of that. We have Bach's toccatas, his suites, like the English suites, French suites, and partitias. The Goldberg Variations, now we're into deadly territory. And finally, the Art of Fugue. This is Bach's easiest collection of pieces, written for his wife, Anna Magdalena Bach. They're a collection of short dances, which include things like minuets and musettes, polonaises, and etc. They tend to range in difficulty from around a grade 3 to a grade 7 level RCM and ABRSM, more or less, and then level 1 to 4 Henley. If you're just starting out, Bach might be slightly out of reach. I'd recommend learning the basics before starting his easiest pieces, since they're not really meant for absolute beginners. But that said, here are the easiest Bach pieces from the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach. We've got a couple minuets, a musette, and a polonaise, and these are all at a grade 3 level. So I just want to make a note too that even though most of these weren't officially written by Bach himself, they're still great early Bach studies. They're in a similar style to his, I guess, true writing. And there are famous pieces in addition to that. I mean, we've done on this channel, we've done minuet in G major and minuet and G minor already. So check out those tutorials if you want to get more into it. I also just want to make a quick note before we keep going. All of this information, the lists of the easiest Bach and etc., is all going to be over on the blog if you want a list of it to check out. Bach's little preludes overlap the notebook for Anna Magdalena somewhat, but they start maybe just a little bit more difficult. So the little preludes are usually bound together with his fuguettas, and the fuguettas are significantly more challenging than the preludes, just to give you a heads up about that. There are a few little preludes in the RCM syllabus around a grade 5 to an 8 level, which is going to be more like Henley 1 to 3. Quite a big difference. So these preludes were meant to serve as lessons on the piano, and they can still kind of serve a similar purpose to us some 300 years later, to work through them stepwise to learn, specific techniques on the keyboard. So here's a list of the easiest preludes from the collection in order of the easiest to the most challenging. And I made a pretty comprehensive list here just so you have a little bit of reference, because they do kind of jump around a little bit. So once we get into Bach's Inventions, we're getting into some solid early advanced level pieces. So these Inventions are written in 2 parts, which basically just means each hand is playing a different tune, like a melody. And these Inventions are a really awesome preparation for the more difficult Bach pieces that involve more than 2 parts or 2 voices. So for example, his fugues, the sinfonias, which we'll look at in a moment, involve 3 voices. And some of his fugues involve even 4 voices. Even though you only have 2 hands, you have to use 4 different melodies all at once. So these are really good training for that. All of the Inventions are a grade 7 or 8 level on the piano, and Henley 3 to 4. So these are just what I consider to be 3 of the easiest ones. And again, this is all going to be over on the blog if you want to check out the list afterwards. So once you've worked through Bach's 15 Inventions, or at least some of them, it's time to move on to the next challenge, which are his 15 sinfonias. And as I mentioned already, the sinfonias are works written in 3 parts as opposed to the 2-part Inventions. And they're really like the final step before approaching his super famous well-tempered clavier collection, which we're going to be discussing in a moment. So these sinfonias, like the Inventions, have a pretty narrow range of difficulty. So they're marked at around a grade 9 RCM level. It'd be pretty equivalent in the ABRSM, probably around a grade 7 or 8 ABRSM, and then Henley level 4 to 5. These are the two easiest sinfonias to start with, but honestly, like, since they're all about the same level, it's not going to be like a huge jump from, like, say, the easiest sinfonia to the most difficult. The Well-Tempered Clavier is a great keyboard collection of preludes and fugues, which Bach paired together. So they kind of go like there's a prelude and there's a fugue pair for each of the 24 keys of the piano. So there are 24 preludes and fugues in this collection. So that includes the major keys and the minor keys. So reaching this point is a pinnacle in piano playing, and a lot of famous composers really enjoyed this collection, including Chopin, who loved to travel with it for study and for practice. Most of this collection is around the Henley level 5 to 6, which would be RCM, grade 10 to ARCT. Some of the preludes individually are a lot easier. Like, for example, the first prelude is actually pretty straightforward and easy, but the fugue that it's paired with is quite challenging. So all together, if you combine both elements, it could be at a grade 9 level. But even if you're not at a grade 9 level yet, you could still learn that prelude, I would say, if you're like a grade 5 or 6 level student. So these are some of the easiest prelude and fugue pairs that I consider to be some of the easiest. Kind of like the Inventions and Sinfonias, there is a little bit of a narrow range of difficulty, but some of them are really hard. So these are kind of just like the slightly less hard ones. I'm just looking at the screen here, and easiest toccatas almost doesn't make any sense because none of the toccatas are even remotely easy. But I've just kind of chosen a few that are the least challenging of the challenging. So we're officially into the very difficult Bach. These are ARCT level pieces with the RCM. They range in difficulty from the ABRSM to a diploma level. So the Henley system puts them around a level 5 to 6 to 7, and just for perspective, the highest number that Henley has in its system is a 9, so it's really getting up there. So I want to talk about the dance suites, and we're going to lump them all together. I think the fun thing about these suites is that since they're all short-ish, a dance suite is basically a collection of a bunch of shorter dance movements. Some of the movements are actually individually quite simple, and others are extremely difficult. So his dance suites tend to range a little bit more in difficulty levels. As a whole, the 6 English suites are around a Henley level 6 to 7, so they're actually very challenging. And they were kind of designed to perform start to finish. As I mentioned, each suite is a collection of several dance movements, but you could pick out certain individual movements and play it a little more simply. Probably the easiest individual movement from the English suite would be the Musette number 3. So check that out if you want to get into some of Bach's dance music. So next up is the French suites, and it's a set of dance tunes that are a really great bit of early advanced Bach, and they're much easier in general than the English suites as well. And they offer like a nice snapshot in time to the Baroque era, so I like that about them. Here are some of the individual movements that are a little easier. And again, the dance suites, when you kind of play them all the way through as like a whole entity, they're much, much more challenging than this, but you can kind of pick out easier movements from them if you want to start getting into Bach's dance music. And then we have the 6 partitions, which Henley describes as the ultimate ones, especially compared to the English and French suites. They're much more challenging at around a Henley level 6 to 7, ABRSM, grade 7 to FRSM, depending on if you're doing individual movements, and then ARCT level. So none of these are easy, but there is one approachable individual movement. So none of these are easy, but there is one approachable partition, and that's the first one. So if you want to see what they're all about, that's a good place to start. We've talked about the really awesome Goldberg Variations on this channel before, and they're definitely among the most challenging piano repertoire ever, like Bach or not. It's rated at a Henley level 9, which, as you probably remember, it's the highest level. So the reason I just wanted to include this is so you not only have an idea of the easiest Bach pieces, but also the ones that are going to take like true mastery to accomplish. And then kind of the same thing with the Art of Fugue. It's really Bach at his deadliest. Again, ranked at a Henley level 9, the highest level there is, and it goes far beyond the highest RCM and ABRSM levels. But it's good to know that this degree of Bach exists for, the true masters out there who want to like really take things to 11. And that is all for today's episode on Bach music. So hopefully this gives you a sense of like the journey of Bach from the easiest collection, the Notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, all the way through the toccatas and the dance suites. So I mean, this is a process that is going to take years. Like this is a very long-term roadmap, but I just find it's helpful to kind of know what the path is, what the journey is. So anyway, thank you to everyone who helps make these videos possible. And to all of you who subscribe and like and leave comments, I really appreciate it. It's awesome. I always enjoy reading your comments. Even if I don't, reply to every single one, I do read them all. And I really love that you guys take the time to share your stories and just your ideas or, to correct me when I'm wrong, because that happens too. So anyway, if you want to keep the conversation going, you can come visit me on social and hang out over there. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. But basically, whoa, sorry about all that. Sounds like an earthquake in here. I wasn't even filming and I was just talking to the camera about how raspy my voice is.